So from last week, we studied what loops are, and we looked at while loop, and today we want to continue with a for loop. Now, for loops helps us also iterate through a list of items just as a loop. So for instance, let's have a list of strings. Let's say patients, okay, and then we have, let's say, um, Lucky, we have Zag, we have James, we have John. So square brackets are arrays. So when we go to data structures, I will show you what we mean by that. So I'm just giving you an example, but we'll be starting data structures this week. So when you get to data structures, I will show you what an array is. So this is what you are seeing is a typical example of an array. So we are just trying to look at a list of patients. Now, what we want to achieve is we want to be able to print all the patients on our screen. When we want to print this patient, this is how it will be printed. But we want to print them one by one. So one tool we can use to achieve that, or one mechanism you can use to achieve that, is to use a for loop. So for loop basically can help us also iterate through a list. Let me just put it that way. Now let me just say for. So this is how you write a for loop. This is the syntax. So for, then you provide, you declare a variable. So mostly you just declare a singular variable of the list. So let's say patient, because each loop cycle represents a single item in the list. For patient in, then you bring the list, then you bring a colon. So for, it can be for student in student. Now you can give it any name of your choice. Let's say P. So this is a variable you are declaring of your own. So it's not a standard name that you must give. The only standard here is that you must use the for keyword, for keyword. It should be a variable name. Then the next keyword you bring is in. Then after the in, then you bring the list you want to iterate through or you want to loop through. So that is the syntax structure. Be patient. Let me just say print P. What this basically means is that print loop through each or go through each list. Go through the entire list, and for each item in the list or each patient in the list, print the name of the patient on our screen. Let me just type the variable name patient instead. See? All right. Then I print. You notice that that's printed every one of them, their names for me. I can perform any formatting on it. I taught you how to format strings. So I can say hello, then I print the person's name. So let me just say hello, then I run this. You see that hello, Lucky, or I can bring an exclamatory sign over here. So you notice that so what this simply means that for each patient in the patient list, print the patient name with this string hello, then the name of the patient, then the exclamatory sign. So that is what a loop does, a for loop does. Now, another thing you should also know is that you can use a for loop to iterate through any type of sequence, either a list, a tuple, a string. Let's look at how to iterate through a string with a loop. So let's say patient name, let's say Zach. Zaki. All right. Now we can say for character in patient's name. Sorry. Print character. So we are just saying for each character in the patient's name, just print it for us. Now I also want you to understand that you can use a while loop to achieve all the things we did right now with the for loop. Now let me show you how to go through. So we are going to just print. Let me copy this over here. Ideally, we can access it at the down, but for the purpose of visualization, like to see what we are doing, I'll just copy and come and paste it over here again. Let me just say new patient list. Let me just say new patient list. Now, I want us to loop through the new patient list with a while loop. Now, so I want you to pay attention on this side. With the while loop, we know that first you need an expression. So, and as long as the while loop continues, as long as there's an item in the list or in the sequence, it will continue to loop through it. Now we need, first of all, an index. In this case, we need an index or the position, index or position. And number three, we will need the limits, because with the while loop, if you don't provide the limit, it will continue to run endless. And number four, you increase the index, increase index. All right, now this is the logic we are going to apply. Now, to the expression is what we are going to start with. So we are going to start with the index first. So we will say, let's say, uh, index equals 0, which computers index or position starts counting from 0. So the index simply means the index, the position of each item in the list. So with for loop, you are accessing the item itself without using the index. But with the while loop, you will need the index to access the item. Then the next thing we need is the limit. And the limit is to say it's now going to be the length of this list. Patient here will give us, when you pass the list new patient, it will give us the number of items in the list. So when we print, let's say, limit right now, here 4, because we have 4 names in the list. So you don't want to go beyond the 4 items in the list. With a while loop as well, you need to define when the loop should stop. If not, the loop will continuously run endlessly. Now, to tell the computer when to stop is to tell it that is to get the number of items in the list. So that now becomes when the how do you call it, the loop should stop, because at that time, the moment all the items are exhausted, you don't want it to continue again. So let's close this and then look at how we are going to write our expression. So we'll say while index is less than limit, because the number of items in the list is what? 4. Is 4. And now we are starting from 0. Last item in the list will be at position 3 or index 3. If we don't close it at that point, we continue to index 4 when we do not have an item at index 4, and thereby giving us an error. So we need to limit it to index 3, and 3 is less than 4, and thereby you just have to say less than the limit. And if you want to use less than or equals to, then it means that you need to deduct 1 from this, and that way you can say when the index is less than or equals to limit. We can just say less than, just for now. What we are going to do is this: we want to print the patients at a particular index. Earlier on, I mentioned it that you have to provide what we call an array accessor. That is the 2 square brackets. We are just going to pass the index to it. Now, what we need to do next is to say index plus equals to 1. What this simply means is we are just adding 1 to the value of the existing value of the index. So if you run this code, you realize that we have gotten the result as expected. So the first thing is going to be, so let me just be printing for you. Let me just add format to it, and let's see the difference. Let's say was at index, then we say the index position. So now let me run this and see. You see that it tells you that what Lucky was at index 0. Where is index 0? Here. Look at it from here. You see that this is Zach at index 1. John was at index 3. This is 3. Now, we are getting this because we keep increasing the number over here so that the number will not remain constantly 0. The issue you had was that because you didn't bring the incremental step, you kept having an endless loop running because 0 will continuously be less than 4. Now, if you have a whole list of items, you can't tell the number of items in the list, so the list can grow. So it is always advisable to add your incremental step over here to avoid an endless loop. Now, we have seen how to achieve the same result with a while loop as well. Now, looking at the whole thing, you realize that it took quite a number of codes to achieve the same result with the while loop as compared to achieving the same result with a for loop. So the for loop, we use 2 lines of code to achieve that. And with the while loop, we used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to achieve the same result. Yeah, so it's just a way of, I'm just trying to explain to you when, so that you know when to use which. Um, now there are some things that you need a while loop to achieve them, and there are some things, of course, we need a for loop to achieve them. Ultimately, they all iterate through a sequence. Now let's come back to the next session for the day. Nested flow statement simply has to do with embedding a flow statement into another. We want to say this is somebody's age. The person is, let's say, 18. And let's say gender can be male or female. All right. So you want to say, if you want to write a simple code. So the simple code you want to write, yeah, there are several ways to do it, but I'm just using this one to just demo or show you how to nest uh if state flow statements. So let's just say, for example, we want to say if age is greater than 18. Okay, then the next thing we want to check is if the person is a male or a female. Just go in ahead and say print you are above 18 years. You are a young, you are a young adult. Let's say you're an adult. Let's say you're an adult. Good. And then else print you are still young. All right. Now let's run this code. The code is saying that this is sorry, anything greater than or equals to 18. So let's say anything greater than or equals to 18, we say you are an adult. So now, so if not else, you just say that you are still young. When you are 18 years, we say you are, when you're 18 years and above, we say you are an adult. When you are how do you call it, less than 18 years, we say you are hot, you are still young. We say if gender equals, let's say, male, then we say, sorry, then we say, we print that what uh, you are a young man. And if you are a female, but then by default, you should be a female if you're not a male. So we can say else, we say you are hot, you are a young woman. Okay, now let's change this to, let's say, female. You say you are a young woman, but notice something. If I say female, you realize that it's still saying you're a young woman. So to avoid that, we say L if gender equals what, female. Then if no gender, if the gender doesn't match either female or a male, we say, we print sorry, I can't, sorry, please tell me a valid gender. Okay, now let's see something. You realize that he's saying, sorry, please tell me a valid gender. A female is not correct. So let's just now make it female. And guess what? He's saying that what? You are a young woman. Now notice this. We have the outer if statement. This is the outer control flow control statement. Now the inside one is the one here. Inner or inner if statement. So you realize that we have an if statement which is outside and it else is here. So this whole thing is to just demonstrate nested if statement. Now another thing is how to nest loops. So this time we are going to now nest just like a nested if statement. We can nest loops too. Let's say, for example, want to print for a number, let's say x range 10. Now range is to just help you generate a sequence of numbers. So x in range 10, which means that it will generate a number for us from let me just print it for you to see for yourself. Let me just print. You realize that it has generated number for us from index 0. That generated 10 items for us. But at the end of the day, it generated what for us? How many items? 10. That is what we use the range function to. So you can use it for other things too, but for now, we are just using it to do just this example. Now, what I want us to do is that I want us to write another for loop statement inside the existing for loop and say for, so now we are printing x at the top, and then we'll just generate another range of 10 items, say for y in range 10. Okay. And then we'll print we'll print y2 as well. You realize that we have what now. What is happening is that at every first cycle it generates. So whenever it starts from, let's say 0, it will generate 0, 1, 2, 3. It will print up to 9. Let me show you how it works. I will use this one. I'll make this one, let's say 3, so that it will be shorter. I want to use outer loop. Now the outer loop has this. You realize that the outer loop is what? 0, 0. Inside the loop, you are trying to loop to another list of items again, that is up to 10 items. The inner loop will print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 9. The outer loop will have the next cycle, which is what? From 0 to what? 1. So you notice 1, it has printed 1 up to 9 again, because you have nested a for loop inside another for loop, which means that at every loop cycle, this for loop will execute. So now guess what? This for loop alone will execute like 30 times, because the outer loop is executing 3 times, and this one will execute at every cycle. This particular loop will iterate 10 times. The outer will loop 3 times, but at every interval or every cycle that the outer loop will iterate, the inner loop will also iterate 10 times per each loop. This ellipse sign means that continuation. Good. Now let's go to the next step of nesting while loop. Then we will try to nest multiple ones. So now take note, you can nest while loop into an if statement. You can nest an if statement into a while loop or a for loop. So you can nest any of the control flow statement into each other and it will still work. Before we go to that stage, I would just want us to nest a while loop, and then when we are done, then we nest them individually again and see how we can try it, and then we continue from there. We have a couple of things to close on today, so let's just move fast. All right, so we are going to declare variable. In this case, instead of 10, I'll just make it So let's say number limits equals, so first of all, I'll say outer index equals 0, and I'll say outer limits equals, let's say, 3. Then we are going to say while outer index is less than 3, is less than outer limits, and we say print outer, let me say out, do you say outer loop? Do you say outer loop? Okay, let me see. Okay, outer loop. Print outer loop. Then we say we print the position, that is the outer in, that is format outer index. Then of course we need to increase the steps. That's equals 1. Let's print this and see. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Now to next it, what we are going to do is we are going to say inner loop, inner index equals 0, and then sorry, inner limit equals, very good. Then we say while index is less than inner limits, print the inner index. And then we increment, or sorry, we increase the inner index plan by 1. Now let's print this and see. All right, we have gotten the same results, but with a longer lines of code. So you can just practice it and let's see. Okay, thank you so much for your time.
If you have not subscribed yet, please do and click the notification button so that you will be the first to know when we release a new video. Visit academy.tincad.com and see you in the next video.